Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to a new episode of One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about season 4, episode 7 of The Handmaid's Tale, entitled Home. And now I think all of us can agree that this title is not a literal title, right? Canada's not June's home, but I think here home represents people who are familiar to you, the comfort, things that you're accustomed to. Emily, Moira, Luke, Rita. These are all things that I think represent home and comfort for June, and she gets reunited with all these individuals in this episode, and I think that's pretty cool. So pretty simple title, I think, but one that still resonates because I like the fact that it's not a literal title. It's more of a figurative one. But I want to start by talking about the scene where June meets with Serena. My God. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I think that's probably one of my favorite scenes in the whole series. Man, Elisabeth put her acting hat on, didn't she? My God. Talk about a read. I mean, that was breathtaking. Like, I was watching that like just mouth open. It almost brought tears to my eyes. The amount of emotion and energy and just vehement hatred that she just brought out in that scene with Serena. Like, I loved as the scene started, I liked how she kind of like dismissed every opportunity that Serena tried to take to kind of make this seem like fate, right? You know, I think God brought you here for this. I think God wants this. I think God wants that. And June's like, no, I came here to tell you how much I hate you. Like, you know, like, so I thought it started off good. I'm like, okay, all right, June's going hard. But when she knelt down and begged for forgiveness, and I loved how June leaned down to her level, but they filled that frame with Elisabeth's face, and just it's like I think she's like literally spitting. We're so close and we could see it, and she's like, you know, when God kills that baby inside you, and you will know a fraction of the pain that you caused us by taking our children away. Man, that scene was killer. Like, I almost wanted, I didn't do it, but I almost wanted to pause it and just applaud. Like, oh my God, Elisabeth crushed that scene. That scene was so good. And like I said, that's probably one of my favorite scenes of the series. Like, that was just a, whew, man. Like, that's one of those things where, like, I'll tell you guys a little, it's not a little personal, it's not a big deal, but I have 2 daughters and I have a son. And if any of my 3 kids were somewhere, like, not even something like Gilead, but just somewhere where I couldn't get to them, even if I knew they were happy, if someone came by and was telling me like these little kind of like minute details about them or something like that, it would bring out that level of energy in me. And I can see how she could just totally just bombard Serena with all of this pent up frustration and anger and hatred. And I've been wanting to tell you this forever. Like, man, like that just felt like 4 seasons of full on release on someone's soul and entire purpose on earth. And it was beautiful, man. Like, and then Elisabeth crushed it. And when we're talking about people crushing it, when I talk about the idea of someone telling me about about the state of my kids, Luke crushed it. Like, I'm not going to try to pronounce his actual name. I don't know how to pronounce it. But the actor who plays Luke, when June was telling him about Hannah's, everything that happened with Hannah while she was in Gilead, not everything, but, when she told him about meeting with Hannah and, she's gotten big, his reactions were perfect. He crushed that scene too. And in a more subtle way than Elisabeth crushed her scene, but I feel like his reactions were so genuine. Like, that's exactly how I would feel in that scenario, with that feeling of like, almost like I didn't realize that I was in for this emotional crushing that I'm getting right now, where it's like it's a crush, but it's a happy crush, like, because you get to hear something, you know something. Like, even if you hear like she's mad, she's okay. Like, I think he just played that so well. So like both of those guys, I mean, man, a phenomenal work from both of them in this episode. I was thoroughly pleased with what I got out of them, and I thought that I just really thought, especially with Luke. I know I'm all over the place here because I'm trying to get my thoughts together, because I just watched it, and when I just watch something, it's like my thoughts are kind of all over the place, even though I take notes. But like, Luke has been kind of not I don't think he's been anyone's favorite character up to this point. But I just felt like his emotions were so pure and it was so real. Like that's what I feel like that's what someone, myself, anyone, that's how we would react in that situation when our child has been off in this terrible place for all this time and I have no idea what's going on with them. And to have your wife come back and say, hey, I saw her, we had a conversation, all this kind of, like that rush. That's what it felt like, a rush. Like he was overcome with emotion and it was just kind of pouring out. He was trying to stifle it. Like you could tell he was kind of like, like, oh my God, I was not ready for this. And like, I felt like that was so real. So it's a little bit more subtle than June's angry outburst, but man, both were amazing. And my hat's off to both of them. They both crushed it. And those are my two favorite moments out of this episode, bar none. But Elisabeth in particular, her scene I thought was probably one of my favorite scenes of the series so far. Another thing I want to talk about is, did I mention that? Oh, no, I did mention that. So one of the other things I want to talk about was when June first arrives in Canada, she's kind of debriefed or whatever, and they take her to this hotel. Did anyone notice how much red was in this hotel? Speaking of red, I don't know if you noticed, I try to wear red every time I do one of these videos. I don't know if I pulled it off. I think maybe I didn't do it at first. Excuse me. I maybe didn't do it at first, but I know I've done it at least probably like the last 3 episodes. I try to wear red when I do this. But I'm on high alert for red on this show because I think it's important when they get out of Gilead, the fact that whether they have the option or not, the fact that they either choose to wear red or be around red or in a situation where they don't have a choice and still have to put on red, I always find that to be interesting. And I mentioned it when June and Janine got to that kind of like refugee camp with what's-his-face, Steven, and Janine still chose to put on red. So June leaves in this hotel room to go take a shower, and she comes back and she's got on a red robe, and I'm putting my notes like, they didn't have no other colors. Like, have you guys ever been to a hotel with red robes? No, they're always white. Like, how do they have a red robe? Like, you would think that you would be a little bit more sensitive to where she had come from and be like, hey, put on this red robe real quick. It's not going to cause any emotional scarring at all. Just go ahead and throw this on. But I'm looking around the room. Red curtains, red accent pillows on the bed, roses. I think Luke had on like a red and some other colored flannel. And I'm just like, it's so interesting to me. And I think this was kind of building up to kind of the supermarket scene that happened later, where it's like you get out, but you're still confronted with all of these memories and things that are going to constantly come up that are going to bring you back there a little bit, even if it's just like a bad memory or a flash, like when she thought she saw handmaids walking down the aisle at the supermarket. Like, those kinds of things are going to happen. And I think that it's a very interesting observation to try to make, especially if you're not looking for that, looking at it going forward, seeing how many times you can see where June is confronted with a reminder of where she came from. And the supermarket scene, I think, was important in a lot of ways because, one, it gave me a very much a Brooks in Shawshank Redemption vibe. So if you guys didn't see Shawshank Redemption, Brooks is a character in this prison. Real long story short, he gets out of prison. He's old as shit. He's probably like 105. He gets out of prison. He gets a job at the supermarket. And everything, he's been in prison forever. So like, think about if you were in prison for 50 years and you get out of prison, the world's going to be an entirely different place to you. You know, if you were in prison and say you went to prison in 1980 and you get out of prison now, you'd be like, what the fuck is these iPhones, like touchscreen TVs? Like it's going to be mind blowing to you, right? And I think that June almost was giving me that Brooks and Shawshank Redemption vibe, where it's kind of like everything was so fast paced, hustle and bustle. There's so many people, everything, and seeing everything being normal. And I wonder, and they didn't do this in the episode, but I wonder if they will in the future, if they're almost going to use that for resentment for her. Like if she's going to almost, because I thought about this when they were having this conversation, when it was June, Moira, it was all the women. I'm not going to run off all the names. But when all the women were having a conversation, and I'm going to come back to this conversation later, but when they were having that conversation, it made me wonder if June is going to start to resent everybody in Canada living a normal and happy life as if fucked up things aren't going on in Gilead. I wonder if they're going to kind of like move in that direction. But anyway, back to the supermarket, you know, she's it's very much a Brooks vibe. Like everything seems kind of like fast paced. She's talking about how much has changed about chips in 7 years, and it's very shocking to the system, I think. And I thought that was a very interesting decision to make. But I also thought, and I wondered if they were going to kind of go into this in the supermarket scene. I also thought it was an interesting choice for her to want to go to the supermarket in the first place, because it almost seemed like she wanted to put herself back into a position, and we're talking about the title of Home, of what you are accustomed to. I said comfort at the beginning, but what you are accustomed to can still provide a level of comfort. And she got accustomed to walking through the supermarket in pairs and having these little secret meetings. And like it's a totally different life. And even though she knows it's terrible and she's out of it, I think there's still a part of her that is what she's accustomed to. That is part of her home. That's part of what is inside her now, is to be used to that sort of thing. And I think that was why she chose to go to the supermarket. Like, you know, if I want to say, if it were me, I would be like, yeah, I'm not trying to see no fucking supermarket. I'm not like I don't want to tie anything to Gilead right now. But, you know, even when she was going through there, I had the thought, like, what if she's going to start seeing things that remind her of Gilead, or she's going to maybe like freak out or something like that. But lots of interesting choices there. I'm kind of wondering where they're going to go with that. Because like I said, they could go in a direction of her resenting people for living normally. They could go in a position of her almost kind of like missing the fight. Because what have I been talking about the entire season, right? June is obsessed with the fight. And now she's back here in Canada. And I can't say here in Canada, but she's in Canada. And everything's normal. Everything's relaxed. There is no fight. And I wonder if she's going to almost have a feeling of like, I've lost my purpose, kind of. Like, I can't sit back here and just chill out when fucked up things are going on in Gilead that I was fighting against. And now I'm out and I'm just going to leave those people to deal with that shit. And I'm just going to sit here and chill. Like, I feel like that's not going to work for her. So I think we'll probably see that probably in episode 9 and or 10, because episode 8, there's a preview for it in the Hulu extras section. And it appears to focus on the trial for Serena and Fred, so that should be a good one. But yeah, I think that they're setting up a lot of different ways that they can take June's character as it pertains to being out of Gilead, and I think all of them are interesting. So I think the only uninteresting way they could take her is for her to just assimilate and go back to normal. That wouldn't be interesting at all. So. Yeah, really, really excited to see where that's going. They gave me a little bit of a taste of it with the whole her seeing the handmaids and her, you know, taking down the chip bag and like looking through and seeing somebody else over there. Like, that's kind of what I expected. And it still gave me big Shawshank Redemption vibes, but the way she kind of like seemed to gather herself before she went to go see when Emily comes over later. And side note, that's another reason why I thought that she might almost kind of like want some of those things that are that she's accustomed to from Gilead, because she said, I want to go to the supermarket and I want you to invite Emily and Rita over. Like, those three things made me think like, oh, she might be trying to like bring some of that Gilead life back into her free life. And I don't know if that's healthy, but I think that's a interesting direction to take the show, so I'm okay with it. But that was really interesting. About that conversation though, once they arrived, they being Emily and Rita, I thought it was really interesting that Rita seemed to totally kind of let go of that Martha vibe that she's clung to since she got out. Like, that's still been there. She never felt like, to me, like she was fully out. Excuse me. And she was fully out until that conversation with June. Not conversation, but until that reuniting with June. She goes, praise effing B. And I was like, oh, that's cute. Like, I don't think Rita, I was like, that's the closest we're going to hear to Rita swearing. Because I've made note that Rita has not, I don't believe, has cursed the entirety of this series. So like I was like, oh, is that the closest that Rita's going to get to cursing? That's cute. And then they're having that conversation later. And I said I was going to come back to this conversation. That's why. You know, they're dogging out Serena, and Rita's like, yeah, fuck her. I'm like, okay, all right, Rita. I see you out here. I thought that was pretty cool. I also liked how when June was conversing with Mark, she said something to the effect of she wants to make them pay or something like that. She refers to the people of Gilead or the commanders or whoever you want to refer to as them. And Mark says, who is them? And she says, the kidnappers. I like that a lot because it's subtle, but choosing to not refer to somebody by who they are and referring to them by what they did is a really cool way of saying, like, this is how I personify you now. Like, you are not a person to me, you are this act. And I think that helps her kind of maintain that hatred, because if she says them is Fred or Serena or the commanders, that makes them human, that makes them people. And to call them the kidnappers, like to give them like that label, I think that's empowering, but I also think that's a way of diminishing them. And I thought that was really cool. She followed up by saying like the Serenas, but I thought the kidnappers was a very interesting way of reminding us that these are not people who are worthy of the respect of even being called by their names. These are people who are only to be called by referred to by the shitty acts that they've done. So I thought that was pretty cool. Let's see what else here. Oh, I wanted to ask you guys what you thought about the sex scene at the end. I kind of looked at it as June, after she had just kind of like released all of this anger and all of this pent up frustration on Serena verbally, that now she wanted to go back home and take control of that life and say, now I'm going to have my opportunity to show dominance and not submissiveness like I was forced to. So, but I'm wondering if you guys felt like, because I feel like there's a number of ways to interpret her, the aggressive nature she had towards that sex scene with Luke, the holding his hand down, covering his mouth. Like, I don't know, did you guys feel like maybe that was a little bit too far? Like you felt like maybe June was doing a little bit too much? Like, I don't know. But I'm curious what you guys think about it. I'm also curious how Luke would interpret that. Like, would Luke look at that as kind of like, she's been through a lot, and hey, I'm down with this. Like, she never asked me, but hey, I'm cool with this. Or is Luke gonna look at it like, I don't know if I like her acting like this, like almost feeling like she brought Gilead home. And I'm curious if you guys looked at it that way at all, or if you think that Luke might have looked at it that way. Lots of different interpretations of that scene and ways you can look at it. So I thought that was a pretty cool thing to think about as well. And then lastly, well, second to lastly, I really liked the, I'm sorry, I'm still getting over this cold. If you watch my Mayor of Easttown video, it's a shit show. Well, it's not a shit show, it's a good video, but my voice was a lot worse off than it is now. But it looks to me like they are setting up Serena as essentially the big bad of these final 3 episodes, because you have, Fred offering to bury the hatchet, essentially recanting what he said about her so that they could team up, because June is going to destroy them essentially. And after that incredible scene with June, Serena kind of goes back to Fred, and Fred's kind of touching the baby, putting his head to her bump. And speaking of which, man, they time jump like a motherfucker in this show. Like, she's showing already, but she looks like she's like maybe like 4 months in or something. But anyway, during that time, you have June's voiceover talking about Serena and how she's evil and how she can't be, all this kind of stuff, how she'll do anything to just feel better about herself, even for a moment. And I feel like they are essentially setting up Serena as on a now after what June said to her, as being on like a revenge tour. Like, I'm gonna team back up with Fred, even though I don't like him, just so I could fuck you over, so I can get that little bit of satisfaction that I need. So I think the next episode is going to be really good. I watched that. It's called Testimony. It looks like it focuses on that trial. And someone in the comments for the last video said that they were upset that we don't have a resolution on June. And they felt like the show had abandoned that Janine, sorry. That the show had abandoned that. And I'm like, no, there's no way. Like, this is not that kind of show. This show is too well written to just forget about Janine like that. Absolutely no way. I'm like, we will get some sort of a resolution on Janine. And I'm 95% certain I saw Janine in the trailer for next week's episode. So, I mean, how many other women are there with eye patches in this show, right? It was a real brief moment, but I'm pretty sure I saw Janine. So we will get some sort of resolution on Janine next week, it looks like. And it looks like we're going to see the trial. And it looks like Elisabeth is going to really be putting on her acting hat again, because, man, after that performance this week, I can't wait to see what she does on the stand testifying against Serena and Fred. If that's what we're going to get, this should be mind-blowing. So really excited to see that. I'll see you guys next week for episode 8. And until then, peace.